I've had some first-hand experiences of a certain kind of injustice. When something triggered a legitimate grievance in me, and I voiced out and sought to seriously discuss solutions, even when I used a calm tone, the other side just couldn't take it and started to accuse me of being emotional, not sophisticated, and blah blah. I was criticized in public for handling some business etiquette the right way. Can you imagine? Turns out it was my good performance that triggered some fragile male ego. However, the same person dismissed and bounced back all my genuine compliments. On the side note, this seems like a pattern. When you compliment a man, they either think you're signaling romance or show difficulty accepting compliments and bounce them back. I wish I had the chance to tell these people. I simply enjoy learning new things and getting things done. I have no intention of outwitting anyone. I'm among those who seek intellectual bonding over romantic or sexual connection. This is consistent with basic research on attraction and attachment. Andrew Huberman discussed this in his podcast about 5 years ago. I've complimented both men and women genuinely. Not being able to accept a compliment may have to do with vulnerability, insecurity, or a fear of being seen clearly. A male not accepting a female's compliment may point to an imagined threat to male ego and status, or an avoidance of being seen and appreciated on equal terms. I was also mistreated for knowing more. I wish these people could turn that anger into something useful, like motivation to learn what I knew that they didn't. Research does show that anger, if handled constructively, can motivate people to overcome obstacles and achieve goals. But in the cases I encountered, the anger was used defensively to protect their ego by trying to control or silence me. I also received anger for being younger and having studied psychology during a growing time of psychology and neuroscience, and therefore being somewhat able to spot manipulation or malicious behaviors. Later, I learned that the anger I received had to do with their jealousy, about which I already have something lined up. Their anger also had to do with shame. I'll publish an episode on the shame rage cycle soon. One thing the shame rage cycle does is exactly what I experienced. I show up with knowledge, honesty, or agency. The other side feels exposed, inadequate, or not enough. Their shame hardens into anger, blame, or control tactics. And so I get punished for being the trigger, not for anything wrong I did. I was also disliked for using my natural-born right to voice concerns or point out work issues. The anger here, though it came in a mild form, had to do with their discomfort with being challenged, their fear of losing control, and their unwillingness to engage in equal, rational problem solving. All of this seems to point to some anger the other side has toward women in the first place. For men, it may come from the mating market disruption, the realization that they can no longer trade financial stability for total compliance. For female women haters, it often comes from internalized patriarchal conditioning and horizontal oppression, where seeing another woman voice her agency triggers their own repressed shame for having stayed silent, or where they please other women's behavior to protect their own standing in a patriarchal system. At its core, they do not want you to speak up or have agency. When the law permits these rights to women, they get angry and find all the means they can to express that anger, suppressing, silencing, shaming, you name it. And that systemic resistance is exactly what we call misogyny. In the strict dictionary sense, misogyny is hatred or prejudice against women. Research and clinical work describe misogynistic behaviors and attitudes as including reluctance to accept women as equal, rational agents, attempts to silence, shame, or downplay women's contributions, prejudice against women's anger. When misogyny operates in everyday settings, it's not always as open hatred, but as systemic resistance to women's agency and voice. The most invisible thing is that someone may not consciously hate women, but they act in every way that a misogynist does. And the saddest part is that a misogynist can be a woman. This leads to a practical paradox we face every day. It's very hard not to feel righteously angry when these misogynistic behaviors fall on us. But when we express that anger, we pay a high price, higher than that paid by an angry man expressing anger. A 2015 study by Salerno and Peter Haging, published in Law and Human Behavior, set up a mock jury deliberation and measured influence. When male jurors expressed anger, they gained greater influence over the group. When female jurors expressed anger with identical arguments, they lost influence. The same emotion, the same content, the same words, completely different social outcome, based solely on the gender of the juror. A 2008 study by Brescal and Ullman, cited across subsequent research, found that both men and women evaluators perceived an angry woman in the workplace less competent than an angry man. She was allocated a lower salary. Her anger was attributed to internal causes, meaning she was judged as being out of control, while his anger was attributed to external causes, meaning he had a legitimate grievance. The same anger read through completely different lenses. Yes, it is extremely unfair. It's just the reality we live in. And unfortunately, it might not change anytime soon. So, should we suppress that anger from received misogyny? Research says no. Instead, we should be strategic about how and where we express it. The research that shows anger costs women influence in group settings also shows that structured, factual, clearly reasoned anger expression reduces that penalty. Naming your grievance specifically, connecting it to observable behavior rather than character, and maintaining a regulated tone does not mean making yourself smaller. It means making yourself harder to dismiss. My personal experiences tell me that we do want to analyze the other party. If they make us angry because they are misogynists in the first place, especially when we voice out or act out whatever rights we have, that's already a red flag, pointing to their own issues. Run a little analysis. What background did they grow up in? Are they civilized enough? Do they seem to have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? What are their roles in our life? Do they really deserve my energy? Yes, we treat everyone equally and kindly, but fairness doesn't mean burning our energy on people who are unwilling to grow. In Buddhist wisdom, this kind of analysis is not about judging or condemning. It's about seeing the other person's conditioned patterns with clarity so we can respond more skillfully instead of reacting blindly. This also means accepting the fact that, for some hardcore misogynists, male or female, there's simply no way for an individual like us to shake their misogyny, even a tiny bit. Perhaps our priority then becomes to preserve our energy and invest it wisely. The toll these misogynists pay isn't small. They miss the opportunity to find solutions together, to build true connection, and to tighten trust. Because even if a woman shows legitimate anger, her intention may be strengthening the relationship, not weakening or breaking it up. This is supported by research. A 2021 study found that when angry women perceived smaller social distance from the person they were in conflict with, they became more trusting, not less. Anger in women, under the right rational conditions, may move toward connection. This is a significant finding that runs counter to the cultural script about women's anger being corrosive or manipulative. When women feel close enough to express anger safely, they may use it to reach toward resolution, not away from it. Yet that very ignorance of not knowing these truths becomes another reason for misogynists to deepen their resentment of women. If you find this useful, hit like and subscribe. And thank you. Your curiosity and willingness to translate anger are received and appreciated.